So first, what I want to do is call your attention to this, because Chambers of Commerce, as many of you know, and I didn't even introduce myself, I'm Joanna Rolick of the Lake Forest, Lake Bluff Chamber of Commerce, and I am one of 4 chambers that is participating today. I invited neighboring chambers to join us, and they enthusiastically said yes. So we have representation here from the DBR Chamber, which I understand you're missing something at DBR because your heritage is Native American. Is that correct? All right. I love that. I love that. But thank you for coming. We have the GLMV Chamber, Carol Levin. Where's Carol? There she is, right back there, the GLMV Chamber. And we have the Highwood Chamber, Jamie, back there too. So we have the 4 chambers. So listen to this. Between our 4 chambers, we represent 10 communities, right? Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, Deerfield, Bannockburn, Riverwoods, Green Oaks, Libertyville, Mundelein, Vernon Hills, and Highwood. And then we have, of course, as one of our speakers, Andrew Johnson, who heads up the Native American Chamber of the state of Illinois, so that today we really have some wonderful representation, which is fantastic. We also have, as a guest today, our Congressman, Brad Schneider, who is back there. Welcome, Brad. Welcome. We've got a whole table full, I see, of the Lake Bluff History Museum. We have people from the library, from the community center, from civic and social organizations. And you know, what this means to me is that the chambers, this just emphasizes the fact that our chambers are about connection, and any of us, any of our chamber execs here will agree with me that that is what we can offer, and that is what we revel in, because this is about connection, but it's also about education, support, collaboration. So I just love what this room symbolizes and who is here today. We also have some very generous sponsors who made this event possible. We have Lake Forest Bank and Trust, Tina and Caroline. Thank you so much. We have Diamond Residential Mortgage. Oh, Mary Erb, here you go. Here you go. And I know that Chris and Paul were going to be here. This is great. Super. Chris and Paul are here. LifeWorking couldn't make it with us today, but Radford Green, we have Cherie and Jessica. Senior living, you must. So you need to talk with these ladies, and afterwards there are materials that are on the table right outside the door so that you can grab some. Because we're very grateful to all of you. Thank you to Radford Green, to Diamond Residential, to the bank. Thank you for all of this. So what I would like to do now is talk a little bit about our speakers today, because we are very, very honored and privileged to have some speakers today that are going to share something that we usually don't hear about. And that's what makes this so very special to me, and I think to all of us. And the catalyst of this is at the table here, who is our board chair, Susan Kelsey, who is also, as many of you have to know by now, a published author and is working on a documentary, but she has introduced me to these wonderful people, and that's why this is so very, very special. So let me tell you a little bit about our speakers. Andrew Johnson, who will be our first speaker, is the Executive Director of the Native American Chamber of Commerce of Illinois. Andrew is an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation. He currently serves as the Executive Director of the Native American Chamber of Commerce and President of Cherokee Corporate Lending. He is also the chairperson of the Illinois Native American Employment Plan Advisory Council and a member of the Business Enterprise Program Council. In addition, his board responsibilities include the Mitchell Museum of the American Indian, and we'll be hearing from Kim, and the Chicago American Indian Community Collaborative. Mr. Johnson formerly served as the Executive Director of the American Indian Center of Chicago. He is a CPA and received his MBA from the University of Southern California. Throughout his career, Andrew has been a key member of the executive management team at multiple corporations, in addition to having extensive depth in the nonprofit industry. Thank you for being here, Andrew. Kim Veek. Kim is the Executive Director of the Mitchell Museum of the American Indian in Evanston, and if you haven't been there, you need to learn about this. Kim brings over 20 years of experience working on behalf of many leading tribal organizations, federal agencies, nonprofit organizations, and private sector entities to develop and deliver culturally relevant initiatives and programming designed to improve the well-being of Native children, families, and communities. Kim is also the founder of Wolf River Consulting Group and previously served as the communications director at the U.S. Department of the Interior's Bureau of Indian Education. Kim is an enrolled member of the Oneida Nation and a descendant of the Menominee tribe of Wisconsin. She joined the Mitchell Museum in October of 2021. Welcome, Kim. And Betsy Four, our third speaker, is the co-CEO and founder of Tiny Organics. Can't wait to hear about this. Ms. Four is currently the co-CEO, I mentioned that. In addition, she is an investment partner at Boston-based female-focused VC firm Factor Ventures and Chicago-based minority-focused VC firm Long Jump. Betsy is also a co-founder of Natives Rising, a holistic career accelerator for Indigenous founders and Indigenous in tech. Previously, she founded Wonder Woof, I like that, the first dog activity monitor and app, and prior to that, she built Mind Candy alongside the current founder of Calm in London. We want to hear about all of this. Betsy has been named Entrepreneur's 100 Women of Impact for 2021, driving real change in business and culture. She has been honored with Forbes 30 Under 30 in manufacturing and industry. She has also been chosen by BBC's 100 Most Inspiring Women. And she is a member of the Turtle Mountain Chippewa tribe. Ladies and gentlemen, this is really amazing. And I want to say, too, that there are people in here, including Michelle and Amani, I'm looking at them right here, who are residents of Lake Forest. And there are others who are affiliated with our chamber who, hearing about this, said, you know what, that's my heritage. And they're here because of that. And they want to make a difference in any way they can. They want to meet our speakers. And so I am very proud and privileged to introduce the first one, Andrew Johnson. Andrew is also going to introduce at the very end. I should tell you what we're going to do. We're going to have each of our speakers give a presentation, and then also Dennis Downs, and I can't believe I forgot to mention Dennis, because we're standing next to something that is one of his pieces of art right here that, ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear about this. This is, or was, a trail tree that sat at Everett and Waukegan Road. So his interesting background, his work, he's going to speak to that when we're done here too, and address some of his other pieces of work there, and you'll find on your table more information.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joanna. Give me just a sec to... Thank you all so very, very much for coming here today. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And what an honor it is to share our culture, our background, and our friendship here. So I think I'm a minor player. I think Kim and Betsy are going to really blow your socks off. So we are so glad you're here. But really want to thank Joanna and Susan. That, my goodness, that's why we're here. Their energy, their dynamism, their efforts are just unmatched. And I think if we would have had you as leaders years ago, we wouldn't have lost this land. So thank you. Thank you all so very, very much. So a little plug on the chamber. And I was going to have an agenda, but a land acknowledgement. At our gathering today, we acknowledge the people and land upon which we meet. It is the location of the ancestral homelands of the people of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Odawa, and Ho-Chunk. It is also the home of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankasha, Wea, Miami, Mascoutin, Sac and Fox, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, and Chickasaw nations. We all have a responsibility to recognize our native nations and work with them as we move forward. So I'm going to go into a little background, a little bit of history, because I want to tell you why we started this chamber, and it's only been a few years. But understanding a little bit of the history of natives here in Illinois, I think is key to understanding where we are today. So, did you notice or recognize every tribal nation mentioned in the acknowledgement? I'm sure for some of you, those names, those tribal nations were new. So probably not. So this is a direct reflection of the federal and state Indian policies practiced against the original people of this region. So as a result, Illinois is one of the few states without any federally or state recognized tribes or trust land or the reservations. And that's yet, because actually there's a bill in front of Congress to recognize a tribal nation. So here's what it looks like when you look at the United States. So here's the Mississippi, and federal Indian policy back in the 1800s, pretty much let's move everybody west of the Mississippi. But again, we're one of the few here, and it's part of the key to understanding the kind of numbers we'll see. Nothing that comes across here is going to come across as being a victim. These are merely challenges and issues that we will overcome as we move forward. But it's part of this effort, part of working with you, that is going to help us in that direction. So a little bit of the background. Illinois, the last formal agreement was the Treaty of Chicago in 1833, and that was really the final removal of the original peoples that were here. So it was an eradication of those, a genocide that occurred. And so when you look at the census there about 1900, literally it was in about the hundreds that were there. Almost all were removed except for the Potawatomi, who had a small space up in the northwestern part, or northwest of Chicago, but that. So limited native population until the 1950s, but you had the Termination Act that was passed and adopted by Congress. So the federal government unilaterally abrogated and annulled all treaties and agreements with tribal nations. And then you had the Relocation Act. So they sought to relocate the natives from the reservation to the urban areas. The Termination Act occurred right after World War II. U.S. was in tremendous debt. And one of the ways it was brought up, how do we rectify this? How do we limit our spending? Well, let's do that. Let's terminate all relations, all treaties with the tribes. The Relocation Act, what occurred at the end of World War II again? You had the atomic bomb. Where were those minerals and resources that were required for that new age? They were on reservations. This was God-forsaken land that many natives were put on, but now they had the resources and wanted to obtain those. So what you had prior to World War II was a native population that was probably about 80% on the reservations, 20% in an urban area. And after World War II, more into the 60s, 70s, and 80s today, it's almost flipped. So almost 80% are in a native urban environment and 20% on the reservation. And actually, these Termination Relocation Acts were not rescinded until 1968, when Richard Nixon was in office and signed that. So you had a whole generation that was working under those. So with Illinois, today though, we have a vibrant Native American population, over 280,000 statewide. This is from the 2020 census, representing over 150 tribal nations. And that's interesting too, because when we talk about the relocation, you had people relocating from all over the United States into major urban areas, of which Chicago was one. You had Route 66, which was just perfect to go along, pick people up, and take them. And literally, some people were simply picked up. But we have Lake County here, 17,000, 170% increase since 2010. And so we're becoming more active economically and politically. And we're still working, though, on proper recognition. And what is a non-issue in other states is a significant issue here. And part of that is in terms of representation and recognition that natives are still here, because we do still hear that. I did not know. I didn't know there were natives here. American Indians are not a race or ethnicity, but a nationality. And that is a significant difference from other groups. So if you look at the race, you have the definition there. If you look at ethnicity, you have the definition with it. But a nationality refers to a country of citizenship. As we talked, I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, or an enrolled member. So is Betsy, so is Kim. And we have to prove that, though. We have to have what's called a CDIB card, which is your certified degree of Indian blood. DNA, people have the different tests, and that doesn't qualify. But then you also have to have a tribal enrollment card. So we're the only people group outside of animals, dogs, that are pedigreed, if you so to speak. But those are what we must have for ours. But it's a special relationship. It's a protected group because of the treaties and laws. We are sovereign nations within the United States, and that's the big difference that we want to communicate. There was an diversity and resiliency study for Chicago's first State of Racial Justice, American Indian Chicagoans, done in 2019. And just to go over those quickly, again, we're not victims, but these are just some of the facts. So 80% live in an urban environment. Chicago is one of the primary population centers of Native Americans. Largest population in the Midwest, second largest east of the Mississippi, ninth largest in the United States. With housing, half of natives are rent burdened, paying more than 30% of their income in rent, and other evidences of housing discrimination as it applies to natives. Education, less likely than whites to have a college degree. Wage increases with that lower for natives than in other racial groups in Chicago. Economics, higher levels of unemployment, lower medium income, paid 20% less position. So this is from University of Illinois, Chicago. This is the study that they did. And then you have the wage gap, larger for our particular population. If we look at public listing of Illinois certified firms, so this is minority business enterprises. There's it changes every day. So these are general numbers, over 3,000 that are there. Of those, 20 are designated American Indian. Now again, if you go back to looking at the states that have federally recognized tribes versus none, you see this kind of a disparity. The tribal nations are significant, very important for the foundation of native businesses there. But actually, when you look at those 20, you got to be careful of those numbers, because 7 of those, they're actually Asian Indian. And I copied down some of their names there. If you look at, so you might see a Patels and some of that. So in terms of those numbers, you have to be very, very careful. So it really comes down to something a bit different what we're looking at. What our challenge is, what we have to do, and why we're doing what we're doing. So African American, we're 1,200, Asian American, 427, 12.6%, Hispanic, then you have Caucasian, and when you break the numbers down, for certified minority businesses here in Illinois, we've got about 11, and actually that number's gone down. I serve on that council, a Business Enterprise Council. That's the council that works with the new Commission for Diversity and Equity that is responsible for the certification, compliance, and outreach as it relates to natives. I was the first one appointed to that particular council by Governor Pritzker just a couple of years ago. We did have a native on there, but he was an employee of the state. But prior to that, there was no native participation in this on this council. So that's why the chamber was started. We have challenges here, and it starts at the youth, goes into college, and goes into the adults. So our work is guided by the belief that Native businesses are a foundation for emerging Native economies that will increase employment and educational prospects and allow our Native communities the opportunity to break the generational cycles of poverty. And today we carry that belief forward and continue to work toward a brighter future with a thriving and connected Native American community that empowers its business leaders with resources, partnerships, services to ensure their success and support the aspirations of our community members. So this is key to be able to meet with you today, is to connect in this way. So I really, really do appreciate us being together. But this is all done in terms of values and responsibilities. And as we go down with wisdom, love, respect, reciprocity, and that's part of the key areas too, is to give back what you have been able to gain and ensure that you are helping others there. Bravery, courage, honesty, humility, and towards creation and the earth to others. And it is acknowledged. This is difficult to do in a balancing act, but we try to promote these values and live those within the businesses and life that we lead. So the Chamber itself provides high-quality pro bono services to American Indians and companies dedicated to helping them with a startup growth and expansion. And I'm sure it's what you all do too. So there's nothing really new with this, but it covers all of these. Starting your business, financing, growing it, business training. Kim's very much a part of a grant that first grant we ever got last year from the state. So we're able to do webinars. We do them twice a month. We're able to do technical assistance, help with the other businesses. We worked with our youth, because that's part of the key too, is to make sure that you instill that understanding, knowledge, and hopefully the desire will come out of that to participate in the business world. So for them to understand, we had at the American Indian Center in August, we had what was called Spending Frenzy, where we had the high school students in, and it was a process there where it was a day in the life or a month in the life of what we all go through. But they received a check, and they had to endorse it. They had to understand how to endorse it. We had a spot where there was a bank. They had to go to the bank. They received the money. What was fun is that the money, I should have brought one of them. What was fun, the money, actually, rather than George Washington on there, we had Jim Thorpe. So that was pretty neat there. So we were able to tell them a little bit about those things. But they took it. And gosh, what's the first thing you do? Once you get a check and you go and you cash it, you got to pay taxes on it. So had them go over to a spot, they pay taxes, and then all down the line. So to buy a house, buy a car, groceries, leisure activities, those kinds of things. And so it was a wonderful experience introducing them to these kinds of activities, and then the support from the other adults that were there too. So we want to start there, challenge them, become business students, major in businesses in the college, go to grad school. Some of the folks in our chamber, actually one fellow majored in kinesiology and did that for a while and then started his own business in that area. So we want to get them thinking, but get them thinking early. And with the other items here. So that concludes my particular piece. Thank you very, very much for allowing me to speak. And now I would like to hand it over to Kim Viju, and I've got to get you set up here. So thank you.